Stop buying overpriced centerfire ammo just because the guys at your local range think PCP rifles are glorified toys. Look, that massive ego trip is costing them serious trigger time and meat in the freezer. Here is the reality check. While they are dealing with insane legal restrictions to go hunting, the airgun industry has quietly built absolute monsters. We are talking about highly tuned tack drivers pushing heavy slugs with enough foot-pounds of energy to drop medium game dead in its tracks. The engineering leaps we have seen in 2026 have completely blurred the lines between a traditional firearm and a modern air hog. These rigs are utilizing carbon fiber and massive power plenums that make the old Springers look like an absolute joke. If you want the raw truth about which platforms are actually worth your hard-earned cash, you're in the right place. We are breaking down the 7 next-level airguns that just took over the global market. Kicking off this list at number 7 is the Benjamin Bulldog in 357. I swapped out our original 7th spot because you guys need a dedicated hunting rig that can actually put meat in the freezer. This bullpup is a pure utility tool designed to throw massive slugs at medium game. Underneath that futuristic polymer stock, it utilizes a uniquely shaped barrel shroud with integrated baffles. Here is why that matters for a hunter. Instead of letting the massive burst of high-pressure air expand instantly and scare off every animal in the woods, those internal baffles strip the turbulent air and redirect the acoustic wave. It takes what should be an ear-ringing explosion from a .357 caliber and tames it down so you do not blow your cover. But let us be real about what it takes to run this beast. It is an absolute air hog. Pushing that much weight at those velocities drains the 3,000 psi reservoir incredibly fast. You are only going to get a handful of full power shots before the foot-pounds of energy drop off a cliff. That means you better have a portable compressor or an extra tank with you in the truck. Settling in for the shot takes some getting used to. The trigger breaks like dragging a rusty chain across a metal pipe. It is definitely not a match-grade unit. When the sear finally releases, the firing sound is a deep, resonant thunk. It sounds exactly like dropping a heavy wooden pallet onto a flat concrete floor. Sound off below if you have taken game with this rig. At number 6, we have the Venturi OmniStorm. Most gas piston rifles lock you into one factory setting, which means you are stuck with whatever recoil and power the engineers decided on. This rifle throws that entire concept out the window and gives you control over the engine itself. It is a brake barrel that thinks it is a high-end pre-charged pneumatic. Underneath the hood, this airgun features the Omni piston system. It utilizes an externally accessible valve that lets you manually pump up or bleed off the internal pressure driving the piston. Tuning the harmonic nodes of the rifle perfectly for your specific hunting pellets is exactly why this mechanism matters. You can dial the pressure down for quiet pest control in the barn, or pump it to the absolute maximum for open field shots. It has no problem throwing .22 caliber lead downrange at 850 feet per second. But let us talk about the catch. The build quality on the stock leaves a lot to be desired. The synthetic material feels hollow and cheap in the hands, almost like a plastic drum. Humping it through the brush means every branch that scrapes against it sounds loud and unnatural. That is the trade-off you make to get this kind of tunable power plant at a budget-friendly price point. Snapping the barrel down takes some muscle, but the trigger brake surprises you. It snaps clean, like a heavy icicle snapping in half under pressure. Once the sear releases, the firing sound is a sharp, resonant thud. It sounds exactly like a rubber mallet hitting a solid oak workbench. It is a completely different beast from the high-pressure air blasts we usually test, but it gets the job done out in the field. This next rig solves a massive headache, But wait until you see the absolute slug slinging monster at number 1. Stepping into the number 5 spot, we have the Umarex Komplete NCR. For years, guys running air guns off the grid had to rely on heavy scuba tanks or CO2 cartridges that completely lock up when the temperature drops. Umarex changed the game by building this rifle around their exclusive nitro air system. Instead of standard air, it utilizes disposable steel cartridges filled with 32 grams of pure nitrogen compressed to 3,600 psi. Because nitrogen is incredibly stable across extreme temperatures, you get consistent velocity, whether you are hunting in the freezing snow or the blazing desert heat. This completely eliminates the thermodynamic freeze issues that plague older gas platforms and keeps your foot-pounds of energy exactly where you need them. Look, the technology is brilliant, but you have to pay to play. Relying on proprietary pre-filled nitrogen cartridges will absolutely drain your wallet if you spend every weekend at the range. Unlike a traditional hand pump setup where the ambient air is free, every single trigger pull on the NCR costs you cash. That financial trade-off makes it an expensive daily shooter, even if it is a survivalist dream. Pushing .22 caliber pellets downrange feels incredibly smooth once you accept the running costs. Rolling onto the trigger, the brake snaps like a dry pine twig under a combat boot. When the valve dumps that high-pressure nitrogen, the firing sound is a sharp, metallic pop. It sounds exactly like a heavy phone book slamming flat onto a concrete floor, completely lacking that typical air blast echo. Now we get into the serious hunting rigs. Coming in at number 4 is the Daystate Blackwolf Zero. This is an English-built tactical chassis that strips away the expensive electronic brains of its older brothers to give you raw mechanical performance. It is a stripped-down canvas designed for the guy who wants elite precision without dropping a fortune. Underneath that minimalist frame, it utilizes a massive power plenum paired with a 20-step mechanical power wheel. By manually dialing the hammer spring tension, you can perfectly tune the strike force for different projectile weights without taking the gun apart. This mechanical control means you are not relying on batteries or circuit boards when you are miles deep in the woods. But here is the truth. It is an absolute air hog when you crank that dial to the maximum setting. Look, pushing .22 cal heavy slugs with that many foot-pounds of energy drains the standard aluminum cylinder ridiculously fast. You will be running back to your fill station far more often than you want to when you are out in the field. Squeezing the trigger on this rig is a completely different experience. It breaks clean, snapping exactly like a thin glass rod freezing over in winter. Once the sear drops, the firing sound is a deep concussive thud. It sounds just like a heavy sledgehammer striking a wet log. It delivers the kind of performance that puts meat in the freezer, provided you bring enough air. Entering the elite tier, we are looking at the Skout SEMI at number 3. Semi-automatic air guns have always been a nightmare of jammed pellets and blown seals that cost a small fortune. This rifle shatters that barrier. It sets you back around $1,399, bringing rapid-fire reliability to a price bracket that actually makes sense for the serious pest control shooter. To keep those follow-up shots accurate, it utilizes a hybrid bull barrel wrapped in a thick carbon fiber wall. This composite design gives you the harmonic dampening of a heavy steel barrel without the front heavy drag. By reducing barrel whip during rapid fire strings, it ensures your point of impact stays locked on target while you empty all 15 rounds from the magazine. But here is the deal. The manual of arms on that new magazine system is notoriously stiff out of the box. Loading it in the dark or with cold hands feels like wrestling with a rusty padlock until it finally breaks in. That is an ergonomic annoyance you will have to deal with if you want lightning-fast follow-up shots on a massive group of pests. Rolling your finger on the trigger, the brake snaps like a dry wishbone cracking in half. Because it is cycling in action, the firing sound is a sharp, mechanical clack, followed by a deep thud. It sounds like a heavy staple gun, driving nails into a sheet of plywood, letting you know the next 22 cal pellet is already chambered and ready to dispatch the next target, closer to the crown. We are looking at the Western Airguns Sidewinder sitting at number 2. This is not just a standard hunting rig. It is an absolute sledgehammer designed for big bore shooters who need massive kinetic energy on tap. If you need to dispatch medium game like coyotes, this select fire platform is exactly what you bring to the woods. Underneath the hood, it utilizes heavy-duty titanium internals paired with an advanced valve system. Here is why that matters. When you are dumping an immense volume of air to cycle heavy projectiles on full auto, the shearing forces will literally tear standard components apart. By reinforcing the entire block with aerospace-grade materials, the engineers ensured the gun cycles flawlessly even when generating 250 foot-pounds of energy. But listen to the brutal reality of running this specific platform. The sheer build weight and overall length make it a chore to carry. It feels almost like lugging a solid steel fence post through the thick brush. Tracking moving targets all day will wear you down quickly because it completely lacks the sleek agility of a micro-compact frame. That is a heavy physical trade-off for carrying a semi-automatic cannon. This rig pushes 30 caliber slugs downrange with devastating force. Squeezing the trigger feels distinct. It snaps over like a thick industrial breaker switch locking into place. Once the hammer slaps, the firing sound is a violent, rolling boom. It genuinely sounds like a muffled stick of dynamite going off underground, letting the entire valley know you just sent a massive payload toward your target. We have looked at some incredible platforms today, from massive big bore cannons to semi-automatic rigs that can clear a field in seconds. But the absolute best air gun requires something more than just raw foot-pounds of energy. It demands a perfect blend of traditional balance, unmatched precision, and an engineering leap that completely rewrites the rules. Coming in at number 1, taking the absolute crown for 2026, is the FX DRS. This rig gives you the sleek, traditional handling that the Skout SEMI completely misses with its bulky front end, while delivering a level of highly regulated precision that puts the Daystate Blackwolf Zero straight to shame. For years, shooters hated the massive air cylinders hanging under the barrels of pneumatic rifles. The FX engineers solved this by utilizing a revolutionary magazine-style power plenum hidden directly inside the action block, paired with an air cylinder integrated seamlessly into the barrel shroud. Here is exactly why that mechanism matters. It gives you the perfect center of gravity of a traditional firearm, letting the gun shoulder beautifully while still providing the massive air volume needed to push heavy 30 cal slugs at high velocity with zero regulator creep. You get a true sub-minute of angle tack driver that looks and feels like a classic hunting rifle. Rolling onto the match-grade trigger, the brake snaps exactly like a thin shard of ice, crushing under a steel combat boot. When that hammer strikes, the firing sound is incredibly muted. It sounds just like a heavy textbook dropping flat onto a thick carpet. This platform is mouse fart quiet, ensuring you never blow your cover when you are dropping pests at 100 yards. Look, the airgun market is shifting fast. If you are still treating pre-charged pneumatics like backyard toys, you're going to get left behind in the woods. We laid out the absolute best platforms hitting the market in 2026. It is up to you to pull the trigger on the right one for your setup. You now know what separates the serious shooters from the guys still reading marketing catalogs.